The status of idiocy, grand and incomparable as it will have been made to appear in the text of the Russian masochist, derives its undeniable weightiness from philosophical debates of the 18th century. To a considerable degree, empirical philosophy depended upon idiocy in order to advance claims about the nature of human understanding. In part a philosophical invention, idiocy did not often stand alone, but engendered a place for the elaboration of its own meaning among asserted correlates. Thus, the idiot appeared alongside or at the head of the train of blind, deaf, or mute subjects, whose implications for subjecthood precisely provoked crisis, and was most closely leagued with the prestige accorded to the construction of the wild child, the teachable idiot on which every school counts. Wordsworth's ballad, The Idiot Boy, belongs to a repertoire of poetic concerns organized around the political blight of what he calls legalized exclusion. Deeply sensitive to what must be classed as social injustice, Wordsworth reflected on his past involvement with the French Revolution, a cause to which he became strongly committed under the influence of Michel Beaupuy. His sense of horror was provoked on one occasion by what became an unforgettable image of destitution, to which he devoted a passage in the prelude. And when we chanced one day to meet a hunger-bitten girl, the poet writes of her who crept along. So this girl, a minimalist specimen, deprived and depraved, socially eviscerated, whose destiny he follows into the ditches. Ever focused on that which has been excluded, minoritized, and objected by institutions capable of producing effects of power, the poet turns his forces against those practitioners of legalized exclusion evinced in the higher ranks of poetic vision or philosophical analysis. Wordsworth does not relinquish the neighborhood of moods in which the idiot boy dwells, but continues throughout his career to evoke sympathy where he had provoked disgust. In the case of the idiot boy, he has stacked the codified levels of disgust, meaning deliberately to flood every feeble sensation of disgust and aversion with his poetic deluge. So this is a poet who wants to pump disgust. His poetic activism, he wrote in a letter to a young poet, to Wilson, consisted in the intent to awaken in his readers what he had often observed in lower classes of society, the conduct of fathers and mothers towards idiots. How tasteless it was for Wordsworth to hold up the lower classes as exemplary, as capable of housing and loving the idiot. In the 16th or 17th century, the idiot blended in with the rest of the passengers on the ship of fools, a character among many tucked haphazardly in the margins of knowledge, unnoted as category and Dasein, or, frankly, meshed into madness. They, idiots, emerged in the discourse on knowledge, being held distinct from the insane, in Locke's essay concerning human understanding. They were pressed into service, assigned to uphold the mythic assurances of a humanly clean slate, presenting such a possibility, in theory at least, to the extent that they, idiots, donated their bodies to the cause of a science that staked everything on what appeared to constitute observable traits of human origins. Essentially an essay on memory, Locke's treatise drafts the idiot for the purposes of supporting his polemic against the doctrine of innate impressions. All children and idiots, Locke observes, have not the least apprehension or thought of them. Because these impressions cannot be said to exist as the purity of origin that the child or idiot approximates, Locke infers that memories cannot be deemed natural or innate to man, but are rather effects and must be produced. So I know one of you is writing his dissertation on memory and forgetting, so I kept these parts in for you. The idiot betokens the inability to produce or retain memories. If idiots, to the contrary, prove to possess innate memories, these would shine out in their full luster and leave us no more doubt of their being there. But alas, among children, idiots, savages, and the grossly illiterate, what general maxims are to be found? What universal principles of knowledge? End quote. The idiot, along with the other members of the lineup, not only annuls memory from the start, but can be seen to threaten the premises of philosophical inquiry to the extent that it exhibits an originary force that, cutting through generality, repels universal principles of knowledge. Recruited into philosophy to make a philosophical point, the idiot belongs outside the philosophy whose cause it promotes. Locke, essentially inventing the idiot, remembers the forgotten idiot in order to produce a discourse on originary forgetting. In any case, and to generalize, Locke has produced the function and place of the idiot from which the empiricist inquiry into the conditions of memory proceeds. The figure of the idiot henceforth inserts an imaginary lesion in philosophy, a condition that calls out for endless symbolic repair. A provisional conclusion to be drawn from these observations is that Wordsworth's resolute embrace of such a determined type cannot be limited to a program imagined nearly to consist of romantic wistfulness, exalted primitivism, or sentimentalism, or even peculiar affective investment, but it responds to the call of philosophy in terms that spell out the empiricist claim on an original subjectivity. When the idiot boy forgets the rules prescribed by his mother as he is sent off to find a doctor, who in the poem is the receptacle of codified knowledge, he breaks away from the instructions and strictures of his philosophical container, which mother momentarily embodies. She tempts for empirical philosophy. Viewed in large strokes, empiricism was a critical force that challenged any authority that claimed to be situated beyond what is available to observation and experience. As concerns its need to observe and experience the idiot, it crashed against the wall of the real. In keeping with a more familiar register, we can say that it encountered an aporetic limit. So it's a limit where things break down and can't be pursued according to any grounding logic. What could be said, strictly speaking, to be observable in the mute resistance or the non-disclosive docility of the idiot? How could idiocy responsibly answer to the quest for the origin of human memory or serve as a solid example of a state of forgetting where sensations pass by without ever being retained, which would seem to indicate that such a state existed for men in general prior to their development of the ability to remember and later to record events and impressions, end quote. Tracking man in his transit from a state of nature to the wholesale acquisition of culture, language, and memory is not something that can be accomplished by observation. A concession to the aporetic snag heads up Condillac's empiricist treatise on the sensations. Quote, "We cannot recollect the ignorance in which we were born." Well, some of us can, but it is a state which leaves no traces behind it.